My name is Morgan, and at 35 years old, I never expected to inherit $11 million from my estranged uncle. I was driving home, excited to tell my husband, Eric, the life-changing news when my world literally crashed around me. I woke up in the hospital, my body broken and in agony. Hours passed, then days, but Eric never showed up. When I finally reached him by phone, his words cut deeper than my injuries. Now, as I lay here watching him walk in with his new wife, I never expected her to look at me and scream those words. My relationship with my Uncle James was complicated at best. He was my father's older brother, but they had a falling out decades ago over the family business. The rift was so deep that our families barely acknowledged each other at rare holiday gatherings. Despite this, I had fond memories of visiting his sprawling countryside estate as a child. Those brief visits always felt magical, with Uncle James showing me his collection of rare books and telling stories of his business adventures abroad. Uncle James was a self-made millionaire who built an empire in real estate development. His business acumen was legendary in our small town, but his personal life was notably empty. He never married or had children, throwing himself completely into his work instead. What I did not know until much later was that he had been secretly keeping tabs on me through the years. "You remind me of myself at your age," he once told me during one of our rare meetings when I was 12, "smart, stubborn, and not afraid to speak your mind." After I graduated college and moved away, Uncle James began sending me birthday cards and occasional letters. I would respond politely, but briefly, unsure how to bridge the family divide. The letters contained mundane updates about his life, business insights, and occasional questions about mine. I never realized he was carefully building a connection with me, the niece he barely knew. 6 months before the accident, Uncle James was diagnosed with advanced heart disease. When I heard the news from a distant cousin, I decided to visit him at the hospital. I remember how frail he looked, a shadow of the imposing figure from my childhood. Yet his eyes lit up when I walked into the room. "Morgan," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I always knew you would come back." That visit turned into weekly ones. We talked about everything from philosophy to politics, making up for lost time. He never mentioned the feud with my father, and I never asked. It was as if we had silently agreed to start fresh. "Life is too short for grudges," he told me during one of our last conversations. I learned that lesson too late. 3 months later, he passed away peacefully in his sleep. I mourned him more deeply than I expected to. As for Eric, our love story began 7 years ago at an art exhibition downtown. I was there writing a piece for the local lifestyle magazine where I worked. Eric was one of the featured artists, his abstract paintings drawing considerable attention. He had this confidence about him, a passion when he spoke about his work that was magnetic. "Art is about seeing the world differently," he said when I interviewed him, "finding beauty in chaos." We started dating shortly after, and within a year, we were married in a small ceremony. We could not afford anything lavish, but it was perfect for us. Eric was determined to make it as an artist, and I supported his dream wholeheartedly. I took a more stable job at an advertising agency to keep us afloat financially while he pursued galleries and commissions. For the first few years, things were wonderful despite our financial struggles. We lived in a modest apartment, saved where we could, and dreamed about the future. Eric would paint late into the night while I edited copy for ad campaigns. We were partners, each playing our part. But the last 2 years had been different. Eric's artistic career remained stagnant, and the rejection seemed to change him. He became moody, withdrawn, and sometimes disappeared for hours without explanation. When questioned, he would snap that he needed space to think or was networking with other artists. Our bank account dwindled as he invested in expensive materials for projects that never seemed to materialize. "You just do not understand," he'd say. The artistic process became his standard response to any questions about money or his whereabouts. I was at work when I received the call from Benjamin Harrison, Uncle James's attorney. Morgan Wallace? This is Benjamin Harrison. I'm handling the estate of James Wallace. Would you be available to come to my office today? I agreed, expecting perhaps a small memento or letter. When Benjamin slid the will across his desk, I nearly fell out of my chair. Uncle James had left me everything, his entire estate, valued at $11 million, plus the family property. He revised his will after your reconciliation, Benjamin explained. He was quite impressed with how you had built your life on your own terms. Attached to the will was a letter in Uncle James's handwriting. Dear Morgan, it began. If you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever comes next. I've watched you grow from afar, admiring your determination and kind heart. You have the same spark I once had, but with the wisdom I lacked. This money is a tool, not a solution. Use it well, be happy, and remember that true wealth isn't measured in dollars. With love, your Uncle James. I signed the necessary paperwork within a day. $11 million. It was an unfathomable amount. I could pay off our debts. Eric could pursue his art without financial pressure. We could buy a house, travel, start a family. The possibilities were endless. On my way out, I stopped at a jewelry store and purchased an expensive watch for Eric, a symbol of our new beginning. I decided not to tell him over the phone. News like this deserved a proper celebration. I called him anyway, just to say I was coming home early with good news. He sounded distracted, almost annoyed. I'm kind of in the middle of something, Morgan. A new art project. Very experimental. This is important, Eric. I will be home in 30 minutes. Fine, he replied. Just don't expect much reaction. I'm in my creative zone. I hung up, feeling slightly deflated but still excited. Once he heard the news, his mood would surely change. Little did I know that call would be one of our last normal conversations. The rain had just started as I pulled onto the highway, a light drizzle that made the road gleam under the afternoon sun. I remember turning on the radio. Some upbeat song was playing as I mentally rehearsed how I would tell Eric about the inheritance. Maybe I would make him close his eyes, place the watch in his hands, and then share the incredible news. I imagined his face lighting up, the stress of recent years melting away as he realized we were financially free. I was so consumed with these thoughts that I almost missed seeing it happen. A semi 2 lanes over suddenly swerved, its tires skidding on the wet pavement. Time seemed to slow as I watched it jackknife, the massive trailer swinging toward me like some terrible pendulum. I jerked the wheel hard to the right, but it was too late. The impact was deafening. Metal crunched against metal as my car spun violently. The airbag exploded into my face with shocking force. Through the chaos, I remember seeing the watch box fly open, the expensive timepiece sliding across the dashboard in slow motion. My last conscious thought was strangely about a roadside billboard advertising family insurance with the tagline, "Protect what matters most." Then darkness. I awoke to the steady beep of heart monitors and the antiseptic smell that only hospitals have. My entire body felt like it had been run through a meat grinder. Even breathing sent sharp pains through my chest. I tried to move and immediately regretted it. Easy there, a gentle voice cautioned. You need to stay still. I forced my eyes to focus on the woman in blue scrubs standing beside my bed. Her name tag read, Sarah Winters, RN. What happened? My voice came out as a rasp. You were in a serious accident on Highway 65, Sarah explained, checking one of my IV lines. You've been unconscious for almost 2 days. 2 days. The information landed like a brick. My husband, does Eric know I am here? Sarah's expression shifted subtly. We contacted the emergency number in your phone, left several messages, but he hasn't come. Even in my drugged state, I felt a stab of confusion. Not yet, but I am sure he will soon, she added, though her tone lacked conviction. Later that day, Dr. Daniel Foster came to explain the extent of my injuries. 3 broken ribs, a severe concussion, a compound fracture in my right leg requiring surgical pins, and various lacerations and contusions. I would need weeks of hospitalization, followed by months of physical therapy. You were extraordinarily lucky, he said. The driver of the truck that hit you did not survive. Lucky? I did not feel lucky as I lay there, unable to reach my husband. I tried calling Eric's phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent text messages that showed as delivered but remained unanswered. Each passing hour without response amplified my anxiety. Sarah became my primary nurse and increasingly my confidant. She would check on me even when not assigned to my room, bringing extra pudding cups or just sitting with me when her shift allowed. Still no word? She asked on the 3rd day, helping me sit up to eat. I shook my head, wincing at the movement. I don't understand. Even if his phone died, he would know something was wrong when I didn't come home. On day 4, I finally received a text from Eric. Heard about accident. Really busy with breakthrough project. Will visit when things calm down. No questions about my condition. No offer to help. Just nothing. That doesn't sound right. Sarah frowned when I showed her the message. Do you have friends who could check on him? I called my friend Melanie, but she sounded strange on the phone, making excuses about why she couldn't visit yet. When I pressed her about Eric, she quickly changed the subject. By the end of the first week, I had become increasingly suspicious. Using Sarah's tablet, I checked social media and found something that made my blood run cold. Eric had checked in at Artemis Gallery, an exclusive art club known for its wealthy patrons, with a caption about celebrating new beginnings. With shaking hands, I called his number again. This time, he answered. His voice was annoyed with music playing in the background. Eric, I am in the hospital. I've been here for a week. Where are you? A pause. Look, Morgan, I'm in the middle of something important. More important than your wife being in critical condition? Another pause, longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, become colder. I don't have time or money for a loser, Morgan. Some of us are moving forward with our lives. The phone went dead. I stared at it in disbelief, tears streaming down my face. What did he mean? Loser. I had just inherited $11 million, and more importantly, I was his wife, injured and alone. Sarah found me sobbing an hour later and immediately called for a sedative. As the medication took effect, dulling both physical and emotional pain, one thought kept circling in my foggy mind. Something was very, very wrong. The days following Eric's cruel phone call were the darkest of my life. I refused food, barely slept, and cried until I had no tears left. The physical pain of my injuries paled compared to the emotional devastation. 7 years of marriage, and this was how it ended? With a dismissal so cold it felt like talking to a stranger. Sarah became concerned enough to call in Dr. Jessica Parker, the hospital's psychologist. A petite woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. Jessica did not offer empty platitudes. What you are experiencing is trauma on multiple levels, she explained during our first session. Physical injury, emotional betrayal, and the shock of sudden abandonment. It's normal to feel like you are drowning. Did he know? I asked aloud, not really expecting an answer. About the money, I mean. What money? Jessica asked. I had not told anyone at the hospital about my inheritance. It seemed unimportant compared to everything else happening. But now I wondered if it was the key to understanding Eric's behavior. I inherited $11 million the day of my accident, I explained. I was on my way to tell Eric when the crash happened. Jessica's eyebrows shot up. That certainly adds another dimension to consider. 2 days later, Melanie finally visited. She entered my room cautiously, clutching a small bouquet of flowers and looking everywhere but at me. "You look terrible," she blurted, then immediately grimaced. "Sorry, that came out wrong." "Why have you been avoiding me?" I asked directly. "The medications have dulled my capacity for social niceties." Melanie sat heavily in the visitor's chair, flowers forgotten in her lap. "I didn't know what to say, Morgan. Everything is so messed up. Tell me what is going on with Eric." She fidgeted with her wedding ring, twisting it nervously. He's with someone else now, a woman named Vanessa." The words hit me like another car crash. "What do you mean with someone else? We are married." "He has been telling people you didn't survive the accident," she whispered, tears forming. "He held a small memorial gathering at your apartment last week. I couldn't bring myself to go." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "He told people I'm dead while I'm lying here in the hospital?" Melanie nodded miserably. "I only found out you were alive when Sarah called me yesterday. Eric blocked all your social media accounts. He changed the locks on your apartment." "Show me," I demanded. "Show me this woman." Reluctantly, Melanie pulled out her phone and opened Instagram. There he was, my husband, arm around a slender woman with dark hair. They were at an art gallery, opening champagne glasses in hand, looking for all the world like an established couple. Something about the woman's face triggered an odd sense of familiarity. She's younger than me, maybe mid-20s, stylishly dressed, with features that somehow echo my own. Her name is Vanessa Laurent. She's some kind of assistant at the Hayward Gallery, Melanie explained. They met about 3 months ago, according to mutual friends. 3 months while I was visiting my dying uncle, Eric had been cultivating a relationship with this woman. I felt physically ill. "There's more," Melanie added, her voice dropping even lower. "People are saying they got married last weekend. Some quick ceremony at the courthouse." Married. My husband had declared me dead and married another woman within days of my accident. The betrayal was so enormous I could not process it. Sarah, who had been hovering nearby, stepped in when she saw my heart rate monitor spiking dangerously. "I think that's enough for today," she said, firmly guiding Melanie toward the door. "I'm so sorry, Morgan," Melanie called back. "I should have told you sooner." After she left, Sarah sat with me, her presence steady, as I tried to make sense of what I had learned. "You need legal help," she said finally. "This is not just betrayal. It's fraud." She was right. With her assistance, I called Benjamin Harrison the next morning. "Morgan, I was beginning to worry," the attorney said. "I have been trying to reach you about some concerning developments." "Let me guess," I said bitterly. "My husband has been asking about my inheritance." "More than asking," Benjamin replied. "He came to my office claiming to be your next of kin, saying you had passed away in an accident. He brought marriage certificates and what appeared to be death documents, though they did not pass closer inspection." "He is trying to steal my inheritance," I said, the pieces finally clicking into place. "It appears so, and he is not working alone. He brought a young woman with him who he introduced as your sister, claiming she should have partial inheritance rights." "I don't have a sister," I said automatically, then froze. What was her name? Vanessa something. French surname. My mind raced. The familiar face. The resemblance people had noted between us. The timing of her appearance in Eric's life, just as Uncle James's health had begun to fail. "Benjamin, I need you to do some digging into this woman's background, and I need you to come to the hospital tomorrow. I think my husband is planning something, and I need to be prepared." That night, I barely slept, my mind piecing together the fragments of this bizarre puzzle. How had Eric known about the inheritance before I told him? Why choose a woman who resembled me to play this con? And why did she look so familiar to me beyond just the physical resemblance? By morning, I had a sickening theory forming, one so twisted I could barely contemplate it. I asked Sarah to set up a small camera in my room, ostensibly for security purposes. Then I sent a text to Eric's phone from Melanie's number, which she had let me borrow. I know about the inheritance. Morgan is awake and remembers everything. You need to fix this before she talks. The response came within minutes. We'll handle it today. Delete this message. They were coming, and I would finally get some answers. I spent the morning preparing myself, both mentally and physically, for the confrontation to come. Sarah helped me sit up properly in bed and adjust my appearance so I looked slightly more vulnerable than I actually felt. Dr. Jessica coached me on maintaining emotional control, regardless of what might be said. Remember, you hold the power here, she reminded me. No matter what he says or does, he cannot take that from you unless you allow it. Benjamin arrived at noon, briefcase in hand, and stationed himself in the chair by the window, where he would not be immediately visible to anyone entering. The small camera Sarah had set up was discreetly recording, its tiny lens aimed at the foot of my bed. "Are you certain you want to do this today?" Benjamin asked, concerned about my still fragile condition. "We could handle this through proper legal channels." "I need to see his face," I replied. "I need to understand why." At precisely 2:00 in the afternoon, there was a knock at my door. My heart rate spiked on the monitor, betraying my anxiety despite my composed exterior. Sarah squeezed my hand once before stepping back to stand near the bathroom door. Eric entered first, dressed in an expensive-looking blazer I had never seen before. His hair was styled differently, and he wore a new watch that probably cost several thousand. The transformation from struggling artist to affluent sophisticate was jarring. His expression as he saw me was not surprise or relief, but annoyance, quickly masked by false concern. "Morgan," he said, his voice theatrical. "You're awake. We have been so worried." "We?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He glanced back toward the doorway, gesturing impatiently. A slender figure stepped into the room but remained partially hidden behind him. I could only see a glimpse of dark hair and a designer dress. "You remember Vanessa?" "Of course," he said smoothly. "Your cousin's daughter." I said nothing, watching as he moved further into the room, his confidence growing with each step. He had always been an actor at heart, convincing in whatever role he chose to play. Today, he had cast himself as the concerned husband. "The doctors say your memory might be affected by the accident," he continued. "So many things have happened while you've been unconscious." "Like you telling everyone I was dead?" I asked quietly. His step faltered momentarily before he recovered. "A terrible misunderstanding. When they first brought you in, they thought you might not make it." I was devastated. "Some people misinterpreted my grief and the new apartment, the art gallery celebrations, the marriage license." His eyes narrowed slightly, calculating. "You've been listening to gossip, darling. Not good for your recovery. What matters now is getting you well and sorting out the financial aspects of your situation." He pulled some papers from his inner pocket. "The doctors mentioned you might not be able to handle your affairs for some time. I have brought some simple forms authorizing me to manage things while you recover." I almost had to admire the performance. If I had been heavily medicated or confused, I might have believed his concerned act, but I could see the coldness behind his eyes, the impatience in the way he held out the papers. "You mean the 11 million I inherited?" I asked bluntly. His expression flickered, surprise quickly masked. "You remember that?" "Yes, of course. Such a blessing, but also a responsibility. In your condition, The stress of managing such funds could impede your recovery. How thoughtful of you to worry about that, I said. He smiled, mistaking my calm for compliance. I have always had your best interests at heart, Morgan. Is that why you blocked my social media accounts, changed our apartment locks, told my friends I was dead? Eric's facade began to crack. You are confused. The medication. Show her the video, Benjamin said suddenly, standing up from his chair. Eric spun around, genuinely startled. Eric? Who the hell are you? Benjamin Harrison, Mrs. Wallace's attorney, and you must be the husband who has been attempting to defraud his injured wife. Benjamin set his tablet on the bed tray, playing security footage from his office, showing Eric and a young woman presenting falsified death certificates and claiming inheritance rights. That is enough, Eric snapped, moving to grab the tablet. Do not touch that, Sarah warned, stepping forward. Hospital security is right outside. The woman who had remained near the doorway finally moved forward, curiosity apparently overcoming caution. As she approached the bed, I got my first clear look at her face. The resemblance was even more striking up close. Same shaped eyes, similar nose. Even the way she carried herself reminded me of myself at a younger age. But there was something else. Something that triggered a deep, almost primal recognition. Vanessa stared at me, her expression shifting from nervous to confused to shocked. Her face paled dramatically as her eyes locked. Oh my God, she whispered, her voice shaking. She is my mother. The room went completely silent. Eric lunged toward her, grabbing her arm. Shut up, he hissed. Stick to the plan. But Vanessa was transfixed, staring at me as if seeing a ghost. With trembling hands, she reached into her purse and pulled out a worn photograph. I have been looking for you my entire life, she said, her voice breaking as she held out the photo for me to see. The image showed a teenage girl holding a newborn baby, her face partly obscured, but unmistakably a younger version of myself. A photograph I had not seen in 17 years, one I thought had been destroyed long ago. As I stared at the evidence of my most carefully guarded secret, the room seemed to spin around me. The beeping of the heart monitor accelerated as pieces of a puzzle I never knew existed suddenly locked into place. My hands trembled as I took the photograph from Vanessa. The teenage girl in the image looked so young, so scared. Her eyes red from crying as she held the tiny bundle for what she knew would be the first and last time. Where did you get this? I whispered. It was with me when I was adopted, Vanessa replied, her voice equally soft. The only link I had to my birth mother. I have carried it with me every day since I was old enough to understand what it meant. Eric made another attempt to intervene. This is ridiculous. She is clearly confused and trying to manipulate the situation. Be quiet, Eric, I said with a newfound authority that seemed to surprise everyone, including myself. For once in your life, just stop talking. I looked back at Vanessa, really studying her face. She had my mother's cheekbones and my eyes. How had I not seen it immediately? Perhaps because I had spent 17 years trying to forget, to push away the memory of the baby I had held only once. I was 18, I began, my voice steadying as I spoke. A senior in high school with plans for college. My boyfriend at the time wanted nothing to do with a baby, and my parents were horrified by the scandal it would cause in our small town. Vanessa sat on the edge of my bed, transfixed. They sent me to stay with a distant aunt during the pregnancy. After you were born, they arranged a closed adoption. I was allowed to hold you once, and someone took this picture. I didn't know they had given you a copy. It was with me when I was adopted, Vanessa explained. The only thing that came with me, my adoptive parents told me. They were wonderful people who never hid the fact that I was adopted. When I turned 18, they supported my decision to search for my birth mother. How did you find Eric? Benjamin asked, his lawyer's mind still focused on unraveling the scheme. Vanessa looked uncomfortably at Eric, who stood rigid with anger by the window. I didn't find him. He found me, she admitted. About 3 months ago, he approached me at the gallery where I work. He said he knew who my birth mother was. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. The memory box, I said, looking at Eric. You found it when we moved last year. Eric said nothing, but his expression confirmed my suspicion. I had kept a small wooden box with a few mementos from that period of my life. The hospital bracelet, a tiny hat, and a copy of that photograph. I thought I had hidden it well, but apparently not well enough. He told me you had been searching for me too, Vanessa continued. That you were wealthy, but estranged from your family, and wanted to reconnect, but were afraid of rejection. And when did marriage enter the picture? I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Vanessa flushed with shame. It happened gradually. He was so attentive, so interested in helping me connect with you. When he proposed 2 weeks ago, saying it would make you happy to see me settled with someone you trusted, it seemed romantic. Then I had my accident, and suddenly I was more valuable dead than alive, I concluded. Eric finally broke his silence. You have no proof of anything. This is all circumstantial and emotional manipulation. Benjamin cleared his throat. Actually, we have quite a bit of evidence, including your attempts to access Morgan's accounts, falsified death certificates, and now this recorded confession, not to mention bigamy, as you are still legally married to Morgan. What I don't understand, Sarah interjected, is why go through all this elaborate scheme? Why not just stay married to Morgan and enjoy the inheritance together? I looked at Eric, really looked at him, seeing him clearly perhaps for the first time because he never loved me. I was convenient, a steady income while he pursued his artistic dreams. But $11 million required a bigger plan. The will has a special provision, Benjamin explained. If Morgan had died without children, a significant portion would have gone to charity, but with a direct descendant, the entire inheritance would stay in the family. And as Vanessa's husband, Eric would have influence over those funds? I finished. Vanessa stood up suddenly, moving away from Eric. You used me. All those things you said about caring for me, about building a future together. Don't be naive, Eric snapped. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement. You wanted to find your birth mother, I helped. The money was just a bonus. By declaring me dead and marrying my daughter? I asked incredulously. Half the inheritance would have gone to her anyway once the relationship was discovered, Eric argued, his true nature now fully exposed. You were just expediting the process by committing fraud, Benjamin pointed out, and potentially murder, if Morgan had died from her injuries without regaining consciousness. Eric's face hardened. You can't prove that. We don't need to, I said quietly. You have done enough damage already. I turned to Vanessa, whose world had clearly been shattered. I am so sorry you were dragged into this. She wiped tears from her eyes. All my life I imagined finding my birth mother. Never like this. Eric made a sudden move toward the door. This is absurd. I am leaving. I would not advise that. Benjamin said calmly. Hospital security is waiting outside, and I have already filed preliminary charges. Leaving now would only add fleeing to the list. As if on cue, 2 security officers appeared in the doorway. Eric looked wildly around the room like a cornered animal searching for escape. Morgan, he tried one last time, his voice taking on the gentle tone I had once loved. We can work this out. Think about everything we have been through together. That is exactly what I am thinking about, I replied. Officers, this is the man I mentioned. As they escorted Eric from the room, Vanessa and I were left in a strange, weighted silence. 17 years of separation hanging between us like an invisible wall. I never stopped thinking about you, I finally said. Not a single day. The days following Eric's arrest were a blur of legal meetings, police statements, and emotional conversations. Benjamin worked tirelessly to untangle the web of fraud Eric had created, discovering that he had attempted to access my bank accounts multiple times using forged documents. He was quite thorough, Benjamin explained during one of our meetings in my hospital room. He had created a paper trail suggesting you had discussed the inheritance with him, even going so far as to forge emails between the two of you. How much trouble is he in? I asked. Not out of concern for Eric, but needing to understand the extent of his crimes. Fraud, forgery, attempted grand theft, bigamy, and potentially conspiracy charges. If we can prove he deliberately left you without medical assistance after the accident, he is looking at significant prison time. The betrayal still felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unravel. 7 years of marriage, and I had never truly known the man I shared my bed with. What about the marriage to Vanessa? I asked. Already filing for annulment, Benjamin replied. Since your marriage to Eric was never legally dissolved, his marriage to Vanessa is invalid. Plus, the evidence of manipulation and fraudulent intent makes it a straightforward case. Vanessa had been visiting daily since the confrontation. Our initial meetings were awkward, filled with long silences and hesitant questions. How do you begin a relationship with the daughter you gave up 17 years ago, especially under such bizarre circumstances? Tell me about your parents, I asked during one of her visits. Your adoptive parents, I mean. Vanessa's face softened. They are wonderful. Dad is a high school science teacher. Mom works as a librarian. They always made sure I knew I was loved and wanted. I'm glad, I said sincerely. That was all I ever hoped for you. They want to meet you when you are ready, she added cautiously. They never spoke badly of you. They always told me you were very young and wanted me to have opportunities you could not provide. Tears filled my eyes. They sound like extraordinary people. Why did you never try to find me? She asked the question that had clearly been weighing on her. I took a deep breath. Partly shame, partly because I thought a clean break would be better for you, and partly because I was afraid. Afraid of what? That you would hate me for giving you up. That you would ask questions I did not have good answers for. That seeing you happy with another family would break my heart all over again. Vanessa reached out tentatively and took my hand. I could never hate you. I have questions. Yes, but I understand you were just a teenager faced with an impossible situation. Her forgiveness, so freely given, broke something open inside me. For the first time since the accident, I wept without restraint, releasing 17 years of guilt and regret. Sarah, who had been checking my vitals, quietly left the room to give us privacy. While my emotional wounds began, the slow process of healing my physical recovery continued as well. The surgeons had done excellent work on my leg, but the road to full mobility would be long. Physical therapy sessions were grueling, often leaving me exhausted and discouraged. You are making remarkable progress, Dr. Foster assured me during one follow-up examination. Many patients with your injuries would still be bedridden. I have good motivation, I replied, glancing at Vanessa, who had taken to attending my therapy sessions for moral support. Benjamin visited again with news about the inheritance situation. Given the circumstances, I believe we should discuss how you want to handle the estate, particularly in light of Vanessa's relationship to you. I had been thinking about this extensively. Uncle James left everything to me because he didn't know about Vanessa. Had he known he had a great niece, I believe he would have included her. So, you want to split the inheritance? Benjamin clarified. Yes, equally, Benjamin clarified. Vanessa immediately protested. Morgan, no, that money is yours. I never came looking for you because of money. I know that. I assured her, "But you are family, my family, and I have 17 years of birthdays and Christmases to make up for." 2 weeks after Eric's arrest, I received a visit from Detective Laura Jennings, the officer handling the case. "We found something concerning when executing the search warrant on your apartment," she explained, placing a sealed evidence bag on my bed tray. Inside was a small bottle of pills with a pharmacy label in my name, but for medication I had never been prescribed. "These are powerful sedatives, often used to treat severe insomnia," Detective Jennings explained. "According to the prescription date, they were filled 3 days before your accident." "I have never had trouble sleeping," I said, confused. "I have never seen these before. We are investigating the possibility that your husband may have been medicating you without your knowledge. Several of your neighbors reported hearing arguments in the weeks before your accident, and one mentioned you seemed unusually tired and disoriented during your last conversation." The implication was clear and chilling. Had Eric been planning to get rid of me even before learning about the inheritance? Had the crash simply provided a convenient opportunity to accelerate his plans? "We may never know the full extent of what he intended," Detective Jennings admitted. "But rest assured, we are building the strongest case possible." As my discharge date approached, practical concerns began to surface. I could not return to the apartment I had shared with Eric, both for legal and emotional reasons. Hotels were not suitable for someone still requiring medical care and physical therapy. "You could stay with me," Vanessa offered. "My place is small, but it has an elevator and no stairs." "I couldn't impose like that," I protested. "It's not an imposition. I want to help," she insisted, then added with a small smile. "Besides, we have a lot of catching up to do." Sarah, who had become a dear friend throughout my hospital stay, had another suggestion. "What about your uncle's property?" Benjamin mentioned. "It's sitting empty." The idea took root. The countryside estate where I had spent those few magical childhood days was now mine. It would need updating and modifications to accommodate my recovery needs, but it offered a fresh start, away from the painful memories of my life with Eric. "It's over an hour from the city," I mused. "Vanessa, that would be a long commute for you to the gallery." She looked down, fidgeting with her purse strap. "Actually, I quit the gallery job last week. Too many memories of how Eric manipulated me there." "What will you do now?" She hesitated before answering. "I've been thinking about going back to school. I always wanted to study psychology, maybe focus on helping adoptees and birth parents navigate reunions." The serendipity of the moment was not lost on me. "The estate has plenty of room. You could stay there while you figure things out, if you want to." "Of course." The look of hope on her face was answer enough. Somehow, from the wreckage of betrayal and pain, a new kind of family was emerging. One built on truth and choice, rather than deception. 6 weeks after the crash that changed everything, I was finally discharged from the hospital. Leaving the place that had been my home during this transformation felt strangely emotional. I hugged Sarah tightly, promising to keep in touch and update her on my progress. "You are one of the strongest people I have ever met," she told me. "Remember that on the hard days." The drive to Uncle James's estate, now my estate, was quiet. Vanessa concentrated on navigating the winding country roads, while I watched the city gradually give way to rolling hills and open fields. A light snow had fallen the night before, dusting the landscape in pristine white that seemed fitting for our fresh start. The house itself was grander than I remembered, a sprawling Victorian with a wraparound porch and large windows. Benjamin had arranged for modifications to accommodate my mobility issues: ramps alongside the front steps, a temporary bedroom set up on the first floor, grab bars in the bathrooms. "What do you think?" I asked Vanessa as we pulled into the circular driveway. "It's beautiful," she replied, her eyes wide. "Like something from a storybook." Those first few weeks of cohabitation were an adjustment for both of us. We were mother and daughter biologically, but strangers in nearly every other way. We circled each other cautiously, learning each other's habits and preferences, finding our rhythm in this new shared life. I discovered that Vanessa was a morning person who sang in the shower. She learned that I could not function without coffee and preferred silence until my second cup. Small revelations that gradually built a bridge between us. My physical recovery continued with home visits from a physical therapist 3 times weekly. The pain was constant but evolving. Sharp stabs giving way to dull aches as my body slowly healed. I graduated from a wheelchair to a walker, then to crutches. Each transition a small victory celebrated with cupcakes that Vanessa would bring home from the local bakery. The emotional healing was more complicated. Dr. Jessica continued our therapy sessions via video calls, helping me process not only Eric's betrayal, but also the sudden reappearance of the daughter I had given up. Relationships built under extreme circumstances can be intense, but fragile, she cautioned. Give yourself and Vanessa time to develop a sustainable connection. Taking her advice, Vanessa and I began establishing rituals that helped normalize our unusual situation. Taking her advice, Vanessa and I began establishing rituals that helped normalize our unusual situation. Sunday movie nights, Thursday cooking experiments, daily walks around the property as my mobility improved. We talked about everything and nothing, filling in the 17-year gap in our shared history. One evening, about 3 months after moving to the estate, Vanessa hesitantly brought up a subject we had both been avoiding. "I would like you to meet my parents," she said. "My adoptive parents, I mean." My stomach tightened with anxiety. "Do they hate me?" "No," she said firmly. "They have always spoken of you with respect. They understood you were in an impossible situation." The meeting was arranged for the following weekend. I spent days worrying about what to wear, what to say, how to thank them for raising the daughter I could not keep. When the day arrived, I was a bundle of nerves, pacing the front hall with my cane. Mark and Diana Laurent turned out to be exactly as Vanessa had described, kind, unpretentious people who greeted me with warmth rather than judgment. "We have always considered ourselves the custodians of Vanessa until you could be part of her life again," Diana told me over tea. "We are so grateful that day has come, even under these difficult circumstances." Their generosity of spirit humbled me. Instead of seeing me as a threat to their relationship with Vanessa, they welcomed me as an addition to their family circle. By the end of their visit, we had made plans for holidays and future gatherings, expanding our unconventional family even further. The legal proceedings against Eric continued in the background of our new life. I attended court hearings when required, facing him across the courtroom with a strength I did not know I possessed. He had lost the charismatic charm that once defined him, appearing sullen and diminished in his orange jumpsuit. When he was finally sentenced to 8 years for fraud and related charges, I felt no satisfaction. "Do you still love him?" Vanessa asked me once after a particularly difficult hearing. "No," I answered truthfully. "I mourn the person I thought he was. But that person never existed. He was a character Eric created, like one of his paintings." As the seasons changed, so did the estate. We planted a garden in spring, transforming the neglected grounds into something vibrant and alive. I found unexpected joy in nurturing growing things, perhaps because it paralleled my own rebirth. Following Benjamin's financial advice, we established a charitable foundation in Uncle James's name, focusing on supporting young single mothers and promoting ethical adoption practices. The irony of using my inheritance this way was not lost on me, but it felt like a way of creating meaning from my own painful experience. Vanessa enrolled in university that fall, commuting to classes while continuing to live at the estate. Her passion for psychology was evident in how she approached everything, always considering the deeper motivations behind behaviors and choices. "You would have been a terrible artist's wife," she told me one evening as we sat on the porch watching the sunset. Too practical, too grounded. And yet, I tried to be one for 7 years. I replied with a rueful smile. Because you thought love meant supporting someone else's dreams at the expense of your own. Her insight struck me deeply. When did you get so wise? I had good parents, she said simply. All three of them. As my physical recovery plateaued, I began considering what I wanted for my own future. The advertising career I had pursued mainly to support Eric's artistic ambitions no longer appealed to me. With financial security now assured, I had the freedom to reinvent myself completely. I started writing, initially just as therapy, but eventually with more serious intent. My story, fictionalized but emotionally true, began to take shape as a novel. The process was cathartic, transforming pain into purpose. 1 year to the day after the accident, we held a small gathering at the estate. Sarah came along with Benjamin, Detective Jennings, Dr. Jessica, Melanie, and Vanessa's adoptive parents. People who had supported us through the darkest times now sharing in the light. As I looked around at these faces, at the unlikely family we had created from the wreckage of betrayal, I was struck by the strange alchemy of life, its ability to transmute lead into gold if given enough time and pressure. I want to propose a toast, I said, raising my glass, to unexpected journeys and the people who help us navigate them. Later, as Vanessa and I sat alone on the porch steps after everyone had gone, she asked the question that had been on both our minds. Do you ever regret it? Not the adoption, but everything that happened after the accident, discovering Eric's betrayal, all the pain. I considered carefully before answering. Regret implies I would choose a different path if given the chance, and I would not. Not if it meant not finding you again. Money can reveal people's true characters, stripping away pretense and exposing what lies beneath. Eric's betrayal taught me that painful lesson. But it also brought me back. My daughter gave me a second chance at a relationship I thought was lost forever. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives create openings for the best to enter. The crash that broke my body led to healing my heart. The husband who betrayed me inadvertently reunited me with the daughter I had grieved for 17 years. The inheritance that made me a target also gave me the freedom to rebuild my life on my terms. As the stars appeared above us, I realized that true wealth had nothing to do with the millions in my bank account and everything to do with the authentic connections I had formed in the aftermath of disaster. I had lost a husband but gained a daughter. Lost illusions but gained clarity. Lost my old life, but gained one infinitely more real and satisfying. What are you thinking about? Vanessa asked, noticing my silence. That sometimes you have to survive a crash to find your way home. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to something positive in your life? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and unexpected second chances. Share this with someone who might need a reminder that even our darkest moments can lead to dawn. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes our greatest strength emerges from our most vulnerable moments.